A little something different here. I'm going to rate every single Rolling Stones album artwork from worst to best. This is all in my opinion. I'm sure you have your own favorite ones and your most disliked ones, but this is my list. The Stones are one of the best in branding and in marketing, and their choices in album artwork have been pretty amazing over the years, and also at times bewildering. I'm going to only focus on the studio albums and not include any compilations or live albums, as much as there are a few clunkers in that category as well. Okay, let's start. At the bottom of the list, I'm sorry to say, is Steel Wheels. There really isn't much here that I could find good. As a concept and as a design, there's nothing here that I could feel enticed to listen to. I've never liked this cold, steel look. I like the text and the font above on top there, but as a whole piece, not a fan. Next we have Undercover. This one is just a little bit all over the place for me. I always get images of Tim Burton's Batman whenever I look at this cover for some reason. I don't know why.
I get again, and again.
I just don't find it very cohesive. I find it kind of all over the place. I don't particularly find the colors to be appealing and easy on the eyes. It's just kind of slapped together, which is probably its charm, but for me, just not one of my favorites. Next up, we have Voodoo Lounge. It's an intriguing cover. I like the image of the devil figure kind of dancing there, but I don't necessarily think that the connection between the title and the figure really blends well. And in fact, I find a lot of the artwork inside the booklet to be a bit more cohesive. But as a whole, it's a little bit lacking, I find. Next on this list is Emotional Rescue. This one really throws me for a loop each time I see it. I mean, it's definitely a cool effect, but it's a little clunky. I mean, the shot of Bill Wyman on the bottom right, a little bit easier to take in rather than the thermal effect going on with Mick above. As a whole, I think it under-delivers. 12 by 5. Yeah, I just find it to be kind of dark and not necessarily enticing for me to look into the music. I find it to be kind of a difficult picture to focus on. It's not exactly showing the band in the best light, no pun intended. Next up, we have Aftermath. Yeah, this is a very cool cover. It's very stylized, and I like the composition and combination of colors here. Very interesting than a lot of the ones that came before it. At the same time, kind of one-dimensional and kind of limiting in my point of view, but still very effective. This is getting into more interesting stuff. The Rolling Stones Now. I like the layout, definitely enjoy the collage of pictures. I like the design of it all. Probably worked better on an album, much larger. You could see all the pictures. On CD may not necessarily work as well, but definitely eye-catching. Next up, we have Bridges to Babylon. Actually, the original release was a slipcover, and the floral paisley design was on the slipcover, and you'd remove that, and the lion was on its own in front of a sky, sand, desert backdrop, which was actually pleasing to the eye. But as a whole, with the floral design on top, it's a little much. I've always enjoyed the font from this album. That kind of stylized lettering has a lot of personality, which I like. But the theme of the album never really completely hit home for me. Aha! Now we get into Dirty Work. Yeah, I like this more than the Bridges to Babylon artwork. Obviously, it's a quirky, crazy album cover, but you gotta admit, it's pretty eye-catching. I don't have the same knee-jerk reaction to this album that most people had when it came out, so I don't necessarily have a violent aversion to this. I can see that it's super 80s and super cheesy looking, but as a composition, I kind of like it. I like the colors. I like how everyone is set up. Maybe had it been a different color scheme. But yeah, this doesn't offend me. I'm not completely opposed to it. Next up is Blue and Lonesome. I always felt that this was a very striking cover. I always thought it was very cool to see it kind of pop out on the shelves whenever you'd be browsing through the racks and shelves, and your eye immediately is drawn to it. I think it's very bold, and I love the hues between the blue and the kind of pink red in the corner. I think it's very attractive and very easygoing on the eyes, and you can't go wrong with the classic tongue logo. So yeah, I think it works very well. Next up is A Bigger Bang. I've always enjoyed this cover. Kind of cool to see them in this setting. My favorite part of the picture is definitely Charlie Watts. That's almost as an iconic of a shot as him on Get Your Yayas Out. Him holding that candle, I think it really saves the picture and really grounds it to some kind of artistic flair. As a whole, it's a little bit on the silly side and very out there, but I think he grounds the picture, which is very fitting because that's sort of his personality in the band anyway. Next up is Out of Our Heads. I've always been intrigued by this picture. It's a very mysterious shot coming from this weird angle, and it's composed as a photograph very, very well. I really love that you're getting a small view of the band, this sliver, and they managed to all get inside that little space, and I think it works really well. I think everyone is photographed very well, and everyone looks pretty cool. Goat's Head Soup. I've always been attracted to this cover. I mean, it's a very mystical, provocative kind of image. You know, it's a veiled Mick Jagger kind of looking through this kind of gauze, this kind of scarf of some sort. And I think it works really well. I will say, though, that the alternate cover to this album is incredible. It's the image of an actual goat's head soup, and it's phenomenal. I love that cover. I wish they had used that as the official cover. Next up, It's Only Rock and Roll. I always thought this was a very clever and kind of eye-grabbing piece of art. I mean, your eye is naturally centered to come in focus on the band coming down the steps with Mick Jagger leading the way, and which I understand is inspired by another painting titled The Coronation of Nicholas II, both in composition and in execution, very, very similar. Next up, we have Between the Buttons. This I've always enjoyed because it has a lot of personality and a lot of texture to it. I love the hazy look around the band that kind of, I don't know, encapsulates a lot of the vibe of around the time, and it seems to indicate that there's something in the music that's representative of this feel. You know, something coming in and out of focus a little bit. Everyone in the band is coming through very nicely, so I think it's a very nice shot and a very good front cover to an album. Then we have Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Yeah, this cover might look pretty familiar. The photograph itself was taken by Michael Cooper, who also worked on another band's iconic album, that being Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. There are definitely winks to that, I would say, and really a different direction. As a cover, I think it works really well. It's very colorful, very vibrant. There's a lot going on, but I think it's overall very effective and very interesting to look at. I mean, you can't help but be drawn to it, and you're kind of studying every bit of it. Very odd and surreal, which is why it's so great. Definitely a classic. Black and Blue. I love the symmetry of this cover. There's something about the three figures making up the cover, and Mick and Keith are up front and Wyman in the back, which almost looks like sort of like a cartoon or a drawing. Your eye kind of focuses in different places, and I love the placement of the name and album title in the corner there. It's kind of like stamped on or something, but good color scheme, and I don't know, very pleasing and easy on the eyes. I've always loved this one. The first album, I always thought it was a very nice introductory shot for the band. It's kind of on a dark side, but at the same time it's very dramatic, and I think it's a fantastic one to introduce the band to the world. It shows that they're on the mysterious side and they're not just like any other band, which puts a little bit of intrigue in the band. Next up, Exile on Main Street. I mean, this is a classic, isn't it? I mean, it's this collage of different photographs, and a lot of them are really strange and downright bizarre. You know, there's a lot of stuff here, and it's really representative of the album. Although sometimes I find that the text is hard to read. You can't necessarily find the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street too clearly on the corner there. It kind of is buried. The image itself sort of takes over. But as a whole, I've always enjoyed the vibe on the cover, and I always thought that it was very, very effective. Next up, we have Some Girls. I've always loved this cover. It's incredibly colorful and vibrant and fun. Obviously, they're having fun with the album. They've put images of their faces on a lot of these cutouts. I think it's very stylized. I love the font of the lettering, the Rolling Stones and Some Girls. I think it's very slick, very tight, and almost kind of comic book pop art vibe, you know, coming through here. So yeah, I think this one is a complete home run. Let It Bleed. I mean, how can you not like this cover? I mean, it's so clean and precise in its execution. A lot of details here, which I love. I love that you can see very clearly what's on top of the cake, and then you've got the different layers, which is going down to the records and all the way up to the little figurines on top. It's a very understated cover, even though there's sort of a lot going on, but it's clean and a lot of space, which I like. And, it's a complete winner for me. I know this one's a bit controversial because there are technically two covers for this. The first was how it was originally released on vinyl, a very simple white with the title on the front. But for the CD reissues, they brought back the originally intended artwork, which is what I'm basing my vote on. I thought this is how the album is seen mostly now. I think it's just brilliant, extremely creative and clever, and again, great details, and a great one to get lost into. You kind of are looking at the writing on the wall, and you can totally sense the scene. It's not a very pleasant scene, and it's a very effective picture because of that. It's just a great one. I love it. Coming up in the top two here, we have Sticky Fingers. I mean, Andy Warhol. It's an absolute classic. It's very artistic. It's creative. It's wonderfully framed. Great shot. And I love the stamps of the name and the album title on the left there. And it's really drawing the eye towards the bulge that's in there, which everyone thinks it's Mick Jagger, but it's not. And if anyone's interested, there's a great little interview piece in the Sticky Fingers live set that they performed in 2015. And they interview the model in this shot. Although there's a little bit of a mystery of who exactly it is. There are two models who claim that it is them on the cover. But I guess it's kind of hard to distinguish who it may be. As a cover, it'll always be a classic to me. And then finally, we have the amazing Tattoo You. Now, for my money, this is their best cover. It is exciting and visually stimulating. The red is so bold, and the detailed tattoo design on Mick Jagger's face is fun to follow along. It's kind of like a maze almost to me. And the title font on top is just so classic and so clean and elegant that it's just a perfectly constructed cover. We have Peter Corriston to thank for the album design and art for that one. Apparently also won a Grammy for best album packaging. Well, that was fun. That was kind of nice to go through all the artwork and see how they all rated amongst each other. Anyway, do you agree with the list? Let me know in the comments. We'll see you next time.